You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
CJ would like to know, is there a point in fasting past 24 hours if you drink black coffee throughout?
So that's a good question. So anything, in the way that we look at fasting, we kind of have three different categories of fasting that we talk about. We have what we call intermittent fasting, which is, the well-known one, which is the 16-8, meaning a person fasts for 16 hours and then they have an eating window for 8 hours. And most people, this is the one they do. They stop eating around 7 or 8 at night, and then they fast and they eat lunch around 12 or 1. And that's what that kind of 16-8 intermittent fasting looks like. Then there's what we call every other day fasts. And that one's common as well. People will do that one maybe once, 2, 3 times a week. And they'll eat supper at nighttime. They'll fast till the next day supper. So they fasted for 24 hours, but they get to eat food every day. So it's not like they have to go to bed one full night without eating. And that works well for some people also. Then when you start doing longer than 24-hour fasts, we call those therapeutic fasts. And those are usually done with a purpose. Some people, I have a friend that, coming off a 7-day fast, and, he's doing it for a health purpose, health reason. So the question is, Brandy, specifically, if they're drinking coffee, is there any purpose? Is there any reason to do a more than 24-hour fast?
Right.
Yeah. So here's how I would answer that question. Coffee, it's funny, right? Like we love coffee. We talk about coffee. It's got a ton of benefits. Very good for you antioxidant wise. A lot of positive studies on coffee, and coffee, especially black coffee, doesn't break a fast in any way whatsoever. Now, some people will do a fast and they'll eliminate everything and just drink water. They'll do a water fast, and that's fine. But if you're drinking coffee and you're doing it longer than 24, you could do that. I would ask the question, why are you doing it? What's the purpose of it? If you're doing it therapeutically, what's your goal? Do you have a timeline in mind? But yeah, there's no problem doing that. Dad, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, just, on one of your points on why are you doing it, I think we talked about this, might have done it on a podcast, I don't remember, but we talked about in cancer, like if you get a cancer diagnosis, a study was done on doing a 3-day fast just to start. That's the protocol, part of the protocol to just to negate all fuel to cancer cells, right? So doing a 3-day fast, and apparently that's very therapeutic for cancer. I guess if you got a cancer diagnosis, it wouldn't be a bad thing to do. But fasting just generally is tremendous for you. Every, aspect of fasting is good. I'm careful about going past a 24-hour fast without purpose, like you said. It's just because, at the end of the day, you got to be careful. You don't want to go without being supervised to some extent. You don't want to go past that 3-day mark, and then, unless you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
As far as coffee, well, if I'd never fast if I couldn't drink coffee.
No, neither would I.
There's no way. No. I tell people, hey, I'm out. I can't drink coffee.
Fasting is coffee.
Hey, even on the reset, like if you can't drink coffee, I'm out, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's just not going to be me. So coffee's so good for you. It's part of your fast, like why drink water if you can drink coffee? No, you want both. I like both.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Catherine says, during the reset, does your body actually kill off cells and detox? And can this cause body odor or smelly urine?
Well, smelly urine is dehydration, typically, right? That's the number one cause of smelly urine is dehydration. So I would say up your water intake big time, because that's usually the cause of that most of the time. Killing off cells. So that is a what they call autophagy, which is the old cells dying off and get eaten up in a sense. And that's one of the benefits of fasting. By the way, fasting. One of the anti-aging aspects of fasting is the fact that your body goes through this autophagy process, which is why, as my dad mentioned, that study of a 3-day fast with cancer is it really stimulates this autophagy process to occur. So that's the first thing. Also, fasting is tremendous for mitochondrial health. It makes your mitochondria healthier, which are those, and mitochondria is just a battery pack of your cells, right? You can't make energy without it. So that it's very healthy for that. Reset, does it stimulate an autophagy? Because one of the benefits of the reset and the reason why we talk about it so much is it's a fasting mimicking in a lot of ways. It mimics fasting in a sense for the insulin purposes. But when you're eating food, it doesn't have the same effect, even if you're eating low insulin food, on autophagy as fasting would. But again, your body naturally turns over. The healthier you are metabolically, the healthier that process goes all the time anyways. So a person who's sick, their ability to get rid of old cells and bad cells and all these things is not as good as somebody who's healthy. So the healthier you get metabolically, the more that process that naturally takes place even better. So the answer to that would be yes, but not the same way as a fasting would. And I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Dad?
Well, just we sort of call, it's fasting without fasting.
Yeah.
It gives you maybe not 100% of the benefits of fasting, actually not eating. But when you eat nutrient dense foods and you keep your insulin down, you're going to get a lot of the benefits, including cell, death and regeneration. Now, one of the things just about you're detoxing. So one of the things that's happening in the reset, and also helps when this is occurring when you're fasting, is you're emptying your liver. And so when you're emptying the liver, I talked about that this morning on the live, like that liver, that organ there, absolutely incredible. And it does 600 things. And one of the things that your liver will do, it produces hormones. It does a lot of things. It produces cholesterol. 85% of your cholesterol comes out of your liver. And cholesterol is very important for the body. So all I'm saying is, like maybe you're going to get you might get a change in the urine or the smell and whatever. And some people, they detox faster than others. And some people get a die-off too of candida, and that can be affecting you. A lot of people don't realize they have yeast in their urine. And not till it starts coming out of the body do you actually realize that. We used to test for that in the office. You could see your yeast in the urine. And a lot of people with candida, when that starts coming out of the body, that's a good thing. You want that.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing just quickly as well that, we talk about the liver all the time. People don't realize that the liver plays a massive role in converting T4 to T3. So a lot of what happens is one of the connections to insulin resistance and people that have sluggish thyroids is the fact that the liver is not properly converting T4 to T3, which causes a lot of issues. So one of the benefits of the reset is also liver health, which also makes the thyroid and everything work better for a lot of people. But anyways, that was just a little aside. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Deb says she just started taking our vitamin D and she's confused on how many drops to take to get 5,000 IU. 5
drops. Each drop is 1,000 IUs.
Yeah, a lot of people, not droppers.
Not droppers. No. Because that thing is, our vitamin D, liquid D is very potent in a sense that each drop is 1,000 IUs. So just tiny, you just little drops. So you just 5 little drops in there, you'll see that's 5,000 IUs. And it's
how many, Brandy, was it? How many in that bottle that you get? Is it 360 doses of?
Yeah,
more.
Yeah, in a dropper, it's a lot. You don't want to it's so. Yeah, it's 5 drops is 5,000 IUs. So
I actually would used to get a few patients with that if you at the start of a cold.
Yeah. Yeah, they call that the vitamin D hammer, right? We wrote about that.
Put the full dropper one day.
Yeah.
Like the first day.
Yeah.
What a difference that makes.
So we wrote.
Oh, by the way, study just came out. Actually, I was going to talk about it this morning and never got to it, on vitamin D. Okay. There was a 102 patient study on vitamin D, a physician. So it wasn't double blind or anything like that, but it was an observational with his patients, a 1 year taking only 2,000 IUs. Out of 102 patients, only one of those patients got a cold. That was a study I read this week. Anyway.
Yeah, and 2,000 IUs is not much.
That's nothing.
That's nothing. No, that's not much. So it's that's good.
That's what Brandy gives to Charlie.
That's right. Every morning in his applesauce.
There you go.
My son forever, when he was younger, he thought his applesauce, he was shocked to learn that applesauce wasn't brown, because I used to open up the Navital capsules and put it into the applesauce and it just made it brown. He was shocked I remember when he first learned that it wasn't brown. So just a little bit, but anyways, go ahead, Brandy.
Rosa says she's in her 3rd week of the reset, but she hasn't gotten her probiotics yet. Slow mail. Is she still getting rid of parasites?
Absolutely. She ain't feeding the bears. Parasites need food. Parasites and Candida love sugar. So I can tell you, Rosa, 100%, they are dying and they're very angry at you. Those little pets inside of you don't like you at all anymore. 100%.
All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Anne says, for low carb almond flour, can it still cause inflammation due to high omega-6 levels?
Well, 2 things, right? So 2 things when it comes to those kind of flours is, it's important to know this, is that some people have a sensitivity to almond flour and don't digest it well. So that will cause inflammation for sure. It definitely can. And again, so when we talk about omega-6 fatty acids, and it's important for people to understand that omega-6 fatty acids, vegetable oil stuff, like the original flaxes and all those kind of things, right? The original omega-6s are good for you. The problem that we have today is we need a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And, the closer to 1-to-1, the healthier, the better it's going to be. But it used to be that most people on average had around a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 between omega-6, omega-3. Now research is clear. It's around 22-to-1. And that massive difference of omega-6 intake versus omega-3 intake has caused a lot of inflammatory disorders. So again, if a person consumes a ton of omega-6s in a day compared to omega-3s, that causes problems, which is why we like DHA for a whole whack of reasons. But one of the reasons people get a lot of omega-6s in their diet as it is. So you just have to, if you're eating, low carb and you're not eating a lot of processed vegetable oils, then that kind of stuff, if you have no sensitivity or no allergy to it, there's no problem to that. But again, if you consume a fair amount of vegetable oils or all these things and you switch to that, you're still going to have issues. So that's how we just tell people to kind of look at the overall thing. Are you consuming a lot of omega-6s? And if not, if you are, then you better increase your omega-3s as well, right? I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dad?
No, it's good.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Go ahead, Brandy.
I have a question from Joan, and I think it's referring to when Dr. Martin said a few weeks ago that you can get vitamin D through the sun through your eyeballs. Does it matter?
This morning.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. Does it happen if you're wearing prescription eyeglasses?
Yes. Yeah, you still get it. And what I was saying, though, is if you can, okay, not everybody can do it. They're so hypersensitive.
Yeah, that's like my eyes.
Yeah, but if you can get, here's the study that I mentioned this morning, that if you can get 20 minutes without sunglasses on, you got little receptors in your eye. Like I said, you're a human solar panel, and you got little solar panels in your eyeballs too. They really need that sunlight. So if you can, if you got hypersensitive eyes, you can't do it. But if you can, And here was the study. The study showed that those solar panels in your eyes increase your melatonin.
You sleep
and
better.
So it's one way your body makes melatonin during the day is by the sun going into your eyeballs. Now, of course, you make melatonin too if it goes on your skin, and especially your arms and legs. But the other thing I mentioned this morning was interesting in this study, as the same sunlight that you need for melatonin in the morning, especially in the morning, but anytime, but especially in the morning, the same thing applies to darkness at night. So the darker your room, the no light at all. And that's why I brought that mask out this morning. I said, don't wear a mask for COVID. I got very controversial this morning. Brandy, wait till you listen to it. You might edit it. But I just said, look, I know everybody wants you to wear the mask, but actually you should wear an eye mask when you sleep.
Especially
because
if
you got no light at all, you're going to get that. You're going to get that extra melatonin, and that's just a study that I commented on this morning. That was our leading story this morning. But it's interesting, isn't it?
Also, there was an interesting paper written showing that even like some of the blue lights or the red lights from alarm clocks affected melatonin production while you sleep, which is why, like, for example, in our room, we just take little black electrical tape and we just covered up all those little lights from things that are plugged in, and just a dark black room for sure. But yeah, that's good advice, because a lot of people that if they get melatonin in the day from the sun and then they get increase the production while they're sleeping, that fixes a lot of sleeping problems as well for people.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Brandy.
Michelin says, I put 35% cream in my coffee during both intermittent fasting and reset. Do I nullify the benefits with the cream?
Depends how much, because what happens is that, here's the thing. If you're looking to be a true fast, then you can only have a certain amount of energy intake, and you're breaking that fast physiologically, right? Now, some things take a long time to digest. Some things don't have the same effect on the purpose of insulin and the purpose of blood sugar and stuff like that while fasting. You just got to be careful how much you're putting in. If you put it a little bit in for taste, that's fine. If it's enough, you just got to, again, it depends. It depends why you're doing it. If you're fasting and your only sin is a little bit of cream in your coffee and you're doing this consistently, I would not sweat it at all. I wouldn't worry about it. If you incorporate that into a lifestyle, I wouldn't worry too much about that. To me, like, we get real caught up on these little fine details when, if you're, like I said, if you're doing this 16-8 and you put a little cream in your coffee, I wouldn't sweat it. I really wouldn't sweat it. Put a lot of cream in your coffee, then that's a different ball game. But yeah,
if you have 10 coffees a day,
yeah,
right?
I wouldn't sweat it too much, right? Like, I just wouldn't get too worked up. You're still having a tremendous impact on insulin. And remember, one of the things we try to tell people with fasting all the time is this. There have been now in the last couple of years, multiple studies come out showing that even if a person fasts and they don't lose any weight, they get so much more metabolically healthy. So again, that's the idea, is to get healthy. Weight loss with fasting is a bonus. A lot of people don't necessarily lose weight just by fasting, but they get metabolically healthier when they fast and they start eating lower carb and stuff like that. Then they start getting all the weight loss benefits to it as well. But fasting is good for you, period. And I wouldn't get too worried about those little details, to be honest with you. I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, if your coffee's that much cream, that's a different ballgame.
Well, and the thing, just to add exactly what to Tony Jr. said, get yourself a recipe for success, not for failure. I always tell people, tell my patient, look, like, reward yourself. Like, come on, life is tough enough. If you, like I said to you earlier, if I can't have a coffee, for heaven's sakes, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. It's like people say, well, I'll never, ever, ever, ever have pasta again. Well, good for you if you can do it. But I always tell people I like the reward system, because I married an Italian girl. So if I can have pasta once in a while, I just love that. And it encourages me even more to stay on a low carb lifestyle and make it a lifestyle. And, if you need a little cream in your coffee, I like my coffee black. But for people that like cream, better to have 35% cream than to have milk.
Yeah.
Better to have 35% cream than to put sugar in it.
Yeah.
Better, far better. So if that's what tickles your fancy, then absolutely do it. And you're still doing great.
All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Okay, so I'm going to get you guys fired up. Are you ready? Francine.
COVID.
No. Francine would like to know, what about red meat and gout? Apparently, they don't go together.
Yeah. Well, listen. Yeah. It that's a good question, because for most people, that is not the cause of their gout. For most people, the uric acid, biochemical process goes through fructose and high insulin. That's
Absolutely.
their problem.
Yep.
The red meat, it's not that they're eating red meat that gave them gout in the first place. Again, probably 90% plus people that have gout, it isn't from red meat. There's a small percentage of people that have a hard time with purines, a small percentage, but it is unreal how over time red meat and stuff has started to take the blame for causing gout. It's the same type of studies that go after meat eaters, because they consider somebody who has McDonald's a meat eater, and then they blame everything that happens around that meal, the fries, the vegetable oils, and all the sugar drinks, but they had a meat, so they're a meat eater, and it's the meat's problem, right? That's how those studies work, by the way. It's not that they're just looking at only the meat, or they're not getting rid of a whole whack of other compounding things, like did that person smoke? And sometimes they do, but they don't. I mean, that's how that works. But the short answer is, if I had gout, I would be very, very, very careful with the amount of fructose, the amount of sugar, and that I would be controlling my insulin. That'd be my first place to start, because that's most likely what caused it in the first place. Then, if that doesn't control the issue, then I would start to look at some other things. But for most people, and I think, Dad, you'd back me up on this, most
100%.
people, they get rid of their gout when they cut out fructose sugar and they bring their insulin down.
I bet you, just for me, I bet you there's nobody in the universe that eats more red meat than me. I think so. I haven't met anybody that eats as much red meat as I do. I'll tell you what, okay? Remember, I remember the first time I ever heard about gout, I was reading in one of my textbooks. They called it the king's disease, because the king used to get it. The rich guys, in the old days, even in the medieval times, when they were, writing about this gout that happened, the king got it and the peasants didn't. So they said, well, the king is eating red meat. No, it's not that the king was eating red meat. He was drinking a lot more wine and beer than the peasant was. And it was
a lot of food.
Yeah, and a lot of alcohol. And so when you get your insulin down, the 99% of people get better, and all their inflammation markers go down, including uric acid. So look, and you're right. There are the odd ones when they talk, because if you Google it, it'll only talk about purines, and gout is purines. And so don't have mushrooms and don't have sauces and all this and that. But it's the sugar, guys.
Yeah.
Don't blame red meat for what sugar is doing to. And just one more point. The reason that I think I'm right, and we're right, the Martin Clinic is right about this, is because when you look at the amount of gout there is today, when the consumption of red meat has gone down, it has gone down because of vegetarians and vegans and blah, blah, blah. It's gone down since the 70s, way down comparatively. But gout has gone way up in the same atmosphere as insulin levels have gone up.
Yeah,
and, I talked about it yesterday. The amount of fructose
Yeah.
that children are consuming is gone up 300% in the last 20 years. 300%. Wait till you see the gout that's going to come out of that. So I get passionate about it because to me, we're getting lied to, and it bugs me. Whenever someone lies to me, I can't handle that.
Well,
it bothers me.
One more thing too, when it comes to the study, because one of the things you're starting to see now when it talks about sugar, it's like, well, no, because see, sugar consumption is down over the last 5 years, and yet we still have all these diseases. But the problem is if the sugar consumption is down to here, it's still that much too high. It doesn't matter if it's coming down. It's still, and that irritates me when I look at statistics or when they show these charts of consumption of sugars coming down, and yet people are having more diabetes and metabolic, is because we're still consuming way too much sugar. I don't care if it's come down. It's still way too high. It doesn't matter. So that's another thing that irritates me with that. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. So yeah, Brandy, to answer your question, yes, you got us worked up.
My favorite part of the day. I have another fasting question from Tyler.
Yeah.
He's fasting 18-6, and he's wondering when he can take his fish oils and his B12.
So B12 anytime, doesn't matter. Like if I'm fasting, I'll take my omega-3s, like the DHA that we have with food at lunchtime is when or dinner. I'll take it because I take a lot of it. Personally, I've taken between 4 and 6 capsules a day, and for me that would probably break a fast in a sense that way. So I'll take it with food, and plus for a lot of people it's easier to take with food anyways. But that's how I would do it. B12 doesn't matter anytime. It won't. Yeah. That won't affect anything. Fish oil, most people do better with food, so I would take it that way. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Laura is wondering if you have any suggestions for dry eyes besides the drops.
Yeah, so 2 things. High DHA. If you go through and look in our Facebook group, there will be a lot of people who will tell you that they've cured their dry eyes by taking a lot of DHA. So I would definitely take a lot of DHA, and I would also take Navital, which has pine bark in it. The combination of those 2 things for a lot of people have fixed dry eyes. I don't know if you have anything else you would suggest with that.
Well, just the reason we get so much of it is computers, our phones, and whatever, right? I mean, just that blue light all the time has a real dryness effect on the eyes. So yeah, the high DHA I found personally has been so very, very good. Because I suffered with dry eyes just because I'm on a computer all the time. And so I find that really, really has helped me and hundreds and hundreds of our patients too.
Yeah. So that's what I would do. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Wellen says we are finished our first reset. How can we tell if 30 days was enough?
That's a good question. I mean, again, how do you feel? First of all, right? How do you feel? Is a good one. How are you sleeping is another good one. Those are the go ahead.
Remember, you're Tony Jr. This comes from you. 3 things: energy, cravings, hunger. You made that up. I stole it from you. If your energy is good, you can come off of it or do it again. I actually have patients that are resetting almost 10 to 11 months of the year. That's how good they feel. And they're so scared they don't want to. They were so metabolically out of whack that once they got better, they, said, well, I just love eating this way. I don't find it hard. Okay, go for it. You want to introduce some of the plant kingdom, like the vegetables and fruit and that. Look, I got no problem. You don't always have. What we recommend at the Martin Clinic is a low-carb lifestyle. Make it part of your lifestyle forever. So whether you're actually doing the reset, you can do the reset once a year, twice a year, every second month. As I'm writing this book right now, I'm talking about that, all the options that you have. But again, what I would say, Wellen, is if there's no problem doing it. So if you want to stay on it, you can. If you want to take a break, you can. For some people, like I said, that had cancer, for example, and I put them on the reset. So, well, no carbs, none, zero, nada, start with 30 days and then, well, you know what? I feel good, whatever. Well, go 60 days, go 90 days, but they had cancer. That's different.
And if somebody has diabetes, for example, or they have they're pre-diabetic, I would do that until a lot of that has been reversed and you can start to introduce, a little bit of carbs and stuff like that. But yeah, it depends what you went on that for in the first place will determine that. But for a lot of people, the average person, after a good month of that, they're ready to start adding a little bit of plants or stuff like that to their diet. Go ahead, Brandy.
Lori says, you mentioned birth control on this morning's podcast. How long does it take the liver to fix itself after years of taking the birth control pill?
Well, the good thing about the liver is that the liver is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. If you pack a liver with fat, which it can happen very quickly, you can also take it off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The liver, there's studies showing a couple of days of fasting or a couple of days of eating low carb and some fat comes off the liver, right? It's so, and even when the liver detoxifies as well, it's amazing how fast the liver can bounce back from things, especially if you're doing the right stuff after, right? If you're not packing it full of fat, if you're rebooting, in a sense, glutathione, if you're doing all those kind of things. I don't know about if there's an exact timeline, but it comes back pretty quickly. I mean, once the liver, I don't know if there's a specific answer to that question. I don't know if you would have a timeline.
Well, timeline, again, like I said, for me, my experience now is that 30-day thing.
Yeah.
But anything you do, like you say, implementing intermittent fasting. But here's what I did mention this morning, and I'll bring it back to the liver. What I mentioned was we were talking about xenoestrogens. And then I talked about birth control, which is usually, and 99% of it is estrogen. They give you horse's urine. And the problem with that is twofold. It elevates your estrogen. We were talking about breast cancer. And I said, there's two things for breast cancer. One is insulin and the other one is estrogen. And one of the problems with birth control, and it's well established, is it does increase your risk of breast cancer. It just does. Blood clots and other things too. But one of the things that it really does, because it elevates your estrogen. And here's another good thing. Now I'm going to bring it to your liver. Your liver produces cholesterol. And everybody says cholesterol is the boogeyman. But remember, cholesterol is FedEx trucks on the highways of your blood vessels to grab triglycerides, but also to transport your estrogen. So you want to elevate your levels of good cholesterol, because good cholesterol, HDL, actually helps to keep your estrogen down. And, you need estrogen, but you don't want extra estrogen, what we call estrogen dominance. So that's a factor there. So it's a very good question. I really appreciate it, because when you realize how your body works, you don't want that extra estrogen. That's what inflames breast cancer big time. And for men, prostate cancer.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Darlene says, my husband has lost the cartilage in his hip and is in a lot of pain. Curious, what is the cause, and can anything help besides surgery?
Yeah, so he lost the cartilage, right? So again, most people it's wear and tear is, but it's funny because they say wear and tear, but for most people it's actually a lack of wear and tear in a sense. The body responds very well to movement. Most joints break down from either a biomechanical issue that occurs in the joints below or above it, or it from a lack of movement is another one. High insulin will break a joint down very quickly. It'll caramelize it very quickly. So there's a lot of aspects to that. So once a cartilage has been, so for example, the hip, right? The hip is an interesting joint because It's a very strong weight bearing joint, and it also is in a flex position all day as we're sitting. And then you have stuff like the hamstring that's pulling onto that's pulling down on the whole hip, whole mechanism of the hip. So when our hamstrings get tight, and so anyways, a lot of things happen to the hip joint specifically that make it wear down faster. Once it does, then you have less cartilage and the joint's not working properly. Then you have inflammation. Again, pain comes from inflammation. A lot of times what happens when you take an x-ray of something, you'll see and you're like, oh, you got a little bit of arthritis in that joint. And the person's like, I got no pain. And it's like, yeah, because you got no inflammation in there, right? That's what happens. Inflammation is what draws all the pain stuff in there. And that's where pain comes from. So you control inflammation, you control pain. It doesn't mean you're going to reverse that cartilage. You can't put cartilage back in there that has been worn or gone away, but you can control the inflammation aspect of it. So and you do that by eating a certain way. Low carb brings inflammation down because of the insulin effect. But also you wanted to, like, for example, we know a lot of people that when they get, like my dad says, so much DHA that they slide into a room and they slide out of a room. And our inflammation formula, which if you take enough of that stuff, we got a unlimited amount of stories of people that have had everything from unable to move their shoulders with frozen shoulder and stuff like that. But that's what I would recommend. And I know you got a lot to say on this issue as well, Dad. So.
Well, just you know, like oftentimes with the hip, and the problem with the hip or a shoulder is that they're avascular.
Yeah.
Not a lot of blood supply going in there and to regenerate. So it makes it difficult. One of the things with cartilage and I like is, and you know, here's what I would do. Okay. Like therapeutically, I would use therapeutic doses of, for a week or two, give yourself a real good shot. Get, like Tony Jr. said, get that inflammation down. I would use the inflammation formula, and I would use bone broth. I love bone broth for this reason, because of collagen. See, bone broth is collagen protein and amino acids. And so your collagen, which you need, is bone broth. It's in the bone broth. It's the best protein in the world, is bone broth protein, because you've got all the minerals, you've got L-glutamine, which is a regenerator. You got, not only for your gut, but for your joints. A lot of people have found with taking like a shake of the protein, the bone broth, it can help. Again, I do it therapeutically for a very short period of time to see if you can't really help. Look, you want to try and avoid surgery if you can. But, for some people, if it's too far gone, hey, that's one thing that modern medicine is good at.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Terry is asking, her and her husband are trying to do keto. Well, she's doing keto, but her husband is also incorporating crappy carbs and junk food. And she wants to know, what is the high fat and sugar combined doing to his body?
It's the worst thing you can do. We always tell people, if you're going to do keto and you're going to eat enough fat, you better not eat carbs, because that literally, if you're going to work in a lab, let's just say I'm going to work in a lab and I want to do a little research on diabetes and I want to take some mice and I got to fatten them up. It's called rat chow, and rat chow, all that is highly inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids, vegetable oils, combined with a ton of sugars and, high insulin carbs. You put those two together, the worst diet on the planet is high carb, high fat.
Poutine and donuts.
Oh yeah. So worst diet. So if you can't do keto, because it's not keto. I mean, it's literally opposite of keto. If you can't, you have protein, you have carbs, you have fat, right? You can eat, protein up. You can eat fat up. But you better keep your carbs very low, right? You better keep your carbs very, very low, which is why, for example, in our Serial Killers program, when we first started, when we had a refeed day, in a sense, where people can have a Saturday and they can have some carbs, you don't want to mix carbs and fat. You want to. So to me, that's the worst thing you can do. You're looking for that. They call those high energy foods. When you combine fat and carbs, that is honestly, that is one of the biggest dietary mistakes people make. And that's how you go bad fast. You can't do that. I mean, that's the worst way to eat. Especially if you throw a little bit of sugar in the mix. I mean, you might as well.
Ice cream.
Yeah, that's the worst way to eat, unfortunately. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Kim would like to know your thoughts on varicose veins and if you can get rid of them without injections or surgery.
It depends, right? I mean, varicose veins, some people have a few varicose veins, some people have some real problems. But again, anything blood vessel related, you can help. No question. If you look what causes problems in blood vessels, again, we'll say it every time, high insulin. High insulin damages the endothelial layers of all blood vessels, and it makes blood flow a problem. Also, veins, bring the blood back up. So, and you think about coming against gravity. So you want healthy blood flow. So you want insulin is one. Nitric oxide is another big time problem in people with varicose veins. They just don't open up their blood vessels enough. So nitric oxide is another thing. Are there things you could do? Yes. If you bring your insulin up, you bring up your nitric oxide, you do things to help improve endothelial layers, such as pine bark extract and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can help a lot. It depends on how bad they are to begin with. Is some people, unfortunately, the varicose veins get so bad, they gotta do a medical intervention to get them back a little bit, right? Because you want to make sure you're not getting clots and stuff like that. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Well, remember a hemorrhoid is a varicose vein, right?
Yeah.
So all of the things that Tony Jr. mentioned are very, very helpful. Over the years, it's helped a lot.
Yes.
In terms of internal hemorrhoids or external.
Yeah.
Circulation.
Yeah.
And, we talk about this and if you read Tony Jr.'s emails, it's really important on that nitric oxide, because nitric oxide, it affects the endothelium, that Teflon layer along your blood vessels. And when you get varicose veins, that's what happens. It's the damage is there. So that's why we always love Navitol, because Navitol has been, they've shown it. I don't know if there's anything that elevates your nitric oxide more than Navitol does. And it's pretty incredible. So I was talking the other day, and just on a side, are we out of time? I don't want to go off on a side issue too much. Brandy, too many questions, or can I say this little story?
Go ahead.
Well, just that actually the first time that I ever saw a study on nitric oxide, I heard about nitric oxide, but the first time I saw a study was in France, because I was doing I was actually presenting a paper there on chronic fatigue syndrome. But there was a guy that was on, I think, after me. His name was Dr. Watson out of Utah, and he talked about nitric oxide. And he said how important that is for your blood vessels. And he said the best thing that he ever found for it was pine bark. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why for blood health, that blood vessel health, that we would definitely recommend. We like curcumin, DHA, stuff like that. Very good for you. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
That was a quicker tangent than I was expecting.
Yeah, that was the shorter version.
I gave the long version the other day.
Anne would like to know, how do you raise your HDL?
Increase your high DHA is one of the best things you can do to increase your HDL. Eggs, meat, and cheese.
Yeah.
Increase your good fat and protein, the healthy ones. It'll elevate. And exercise. Did you know that vitamin E actually increases your HDL? So all those good benefits of those three things, and the primary thing is therapeutically would be high DHA oil, food, eggs, meat, and cheese. Yeah,
because there's HDL to a certain extent is correlated to metabolic health, right? The more metabolically healthy a person is, generally speaking, they don't have a problem with HDL. So if you just look, how does a person become metabolically healthy? Food is one. And then specifically, like my dad said, for triglycerides, or HDL would be would be DHA for sure. That'd be the way to go. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Deborah would like to know if there is a link between high anxiety and high sugar levels.
Yep, for sure. Again, for sure there can be. Because, and the mechanism is actually, so if you look at, there are 3 hormones that bring up blood sugar, and there's one that brings it down, right? We all know insulin lowers blood sugar. There are 3 that bring it up. Cortisol is a hormone that actually raises blood sugar levels. And cortisol is impacted by diet. The way we eat can affect our cortisol levels as well. And what makes cortisol unique is that even without dietary stuff, stress obviously is what impacts cortisol the most, right? So if you look at somebody who is eating a ton of sugar, if you look at the impact that's doing just even the biochemistry of the blood in terms of high blood sugar, low blood sugar, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, that creates, so when you bring your blood sugar down, so if you eat a lot of sugar, it spikes your blood sugar levels up, then your body does what it can to bring it back down, so it secretes insulin. But the problem with that is that the body will overshoot a lot of time. It makes way too much insulin. It brings your blood sugar levels down a little bit. Then your body has to kick in again to bring that blood sugar back up, so you're making more cortisol that way. So that's one mechanism. Also, high sugar diets, the body can interpret as stress, and that will also cause an adrenal reaction. That will cause a cortisol reaction. So it can. In fact, there are a lot of people that when they bring their diet under control and they start to control cortisol, their anxiety levels definitely start to stabilize a lot better. So there is for sure it's not for everybody, but there's a definite link between high sugar intakes. And for somebody who's susceptible to anxiety, 100%. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Dad.
Well, it's just that, it's exactly right, because we wrote a book several years ago now, 2 hormones that want you dead, insulin and cortisol, and boy, they go together big time. Mm-hmm. They do. So yeah, get both of them down. Very important.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Brandy. We got about 10 minutes left, so we'll try to go through these as fast as we can.
I don't have a name for this one, but mom has stage 1 prolapsed bladder. Will the hormonal support and exercise help with that? Yeah,
I would take a lot of DHA as well. There's a definite benefit to taking DHA. Seems like that's the theme today, of DHA is the theme of the hour. But yeah, for bladder health, exercise, yep, for sure. DHA, yep, for sure. I know my dad talks about probiotics a lot of times for bladder health also. And then definitely balancing out a few of those hormones. I don't know if you have anything else you would add to that, Dad?
No, that's pretty well what I would do for that. Yeah. And, keep your bladder, keep the probiotics make a big difference in the bladder, big time.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Kimberly is experiencing knee pain for the first time in her life, and she's taking the bone broth, but she's wondering if there's anything else that can prevent that.
Yeah. So knee pain again. So when it's funny, right? Because like when people come in and for knee pain, I usually get them to kind of point where they're, because knee means a lot of things, right? Is it underneath the kneecap? Is it below the kneecap? Is it behind the knee? There's a lot of areas there, right? But when somebody has knee pain, a lot of times it could be they're getting tendonitis in the knee, or they irritated their meniscus or something. So if it's an injury based, then injury needs to be treated. It needs to be addressed that way. And then in terms of nutrition wise, we always give the same advice with that. Things heal better, low carb, less sugar. And then we would have them take a fair amount of DHA, a fair amount of Navitol, and a fair amount of inflammation formula. And that usually does the trick. But if it's an injury, the injury needs to be treated. Figure out exactly what's going on. If it's a meniscus, did they tweak a ligament? Are they having patella tendonitis? Are they, quad issues, hamstring, stuff like that is where we would go with that. All right, go ahead, Brandy.
Lori would like to know, besides probiotics and healthy food, do you recommend any other supplements for acne in teenagers? Yeah.
So you mentioned dietary stuff. You mentioned probiotics. Sometimes they need enzymes. A lot of times they may have an issue with breaking down foods. So if somebody had acne, I'd recommend enzymes and probiotics. And then I would recommend stuff for skin health. Again, skin is the largest organ in the body, and the skin is a lot of times a reflection of gut health. So obviously there's an issue going on there. I would identify if there's any food sensitivities as well that might be causing it. And then again, for skin health, we like a lot Navitol and DHA again, which is the theme of the hour. DHA is tremendous for skin health, but a DHA, Navitol, is there food sensitivity, probiotics, and definitely digestive enzymes. And sometimes they got to do like a candida type of thing as well, is usually what we would recommend. And I don't know if you have anything else with
Well,
that.
the gut, right? Gut skin connection.
Yeah, 100%.
So, if they got acne,
They got a gut
they
issue.
got gut problems.
Yeah, and they might have a hidden sensitivity. If they have a skin
Dairy
issue,
might be bothering
Yeah.
them or something.
Might be
You got to
dairy
figure
as well.
that out.
yeah, you got to identify. I would recommend they go through our either leaky gut. We should actually do a video on skin health. Maybe we'll do a little training on that coming up because we get a lot of questions. Maybe we'll do that. Talk about all the different things. So maybe Brandy remind us to do that. And we can get a video out for that as well.
Add
Perfect.
it to my list.
Sounds good. All right, go ahead.
What are your thoughts on dental implants?
They hurt. Yeah, I mean, I'm like neutral on it. I have no strong opinion one way or the other. If they're needed, they're needed. I mean, back in the early days, the problem with a lot of dental stuff in the early days was all the mercury that they were throwing around. And there's like root canals are controversial. You start reading about some of the introduction of that bacteria into the sinuses or into so there are some stuff, and they, so that's another interesting dentists over the years have had to modify how they do a lot of things, and a lot of controversy on wisdom teeth as well. Makes for some interesting conversations. I got some buddies that are that are more knowledgeable in this area, and they're dead set against a few of those things. But implants, I don't know enough about the long-term effect to comment on that really, but I haven't really come across anything. Not like I have with root canals and wisdom teeth stuff and mercury, obviously, and all those things. I don't know if you have anything else on that, Dad.
Well, just, now you're getting into the subject of oral health.
Yeah.
So if you have implants or whatever, I always tell my patients, look, remember, probiotics go everywhere.
Yeah.
So you want to have healthy bacteria. That was one of the issues with root canals or whatever, was always the secondary infection creating inflammation. There was the connection between your oral health and your heart disease. So I say the way to cut that all off and get very healthy is to make, it's probiotics. It's healthy. It's, make sure your mouth is got enough good friendly bacteria in there. That's why I love probiotics.
Mm-hmm. All right, go ahead, Brian. We got a couple more questions left, and then we're gonna be out of time.
Deb's 8-year-old granddaughter suffers with growing pains in legs at night and can't sleep. Is this restless leg, and what can she do?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So a few things that we would recommend right off the top as well is I would always look at diet also, because a lot of times these growing pains are kind of a side effect of like a food sensitivity, food allergy. Are they getting enough protein in their diet? That's a big thing. A lot of kids just do not get enough. If their diet is, low in protein, that can cause those effects as well. And then a lot of kids don't get enough vitamin D and enough magnesium as well. So that's where I would look. Those would be the big things I would check first. If they're getting enough vitamin D, enough magnesium, and they're getting enough protein and their enzymes and stuff are working, usually that fixes that issue.
I do 2,000 IUs of vitamin D at least.
Yeah.
And get off the sugars, because what sugar does, you're now eliminating magnesium.
Yeah.
And so you might put them on some magnesium and Epsom salt baths or things like that to get their magnesium levels up and cut that sugar out of their diet. It's amazing what happens.
Yeah. All right, Brandy, one more question.
Loretta would like to know what your thoughts are on plant sterols.
Well, Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there can be a lot of benefits to it. I mean, it depends on in what form or how they're taking them, right? So some things are better than others. There's no question, but
I haven't heard that question in a lot of years.
no,
Plant sterols. I remember, I
No.
don't know how many years, maybe 20. It sort of went through, people were talking about them and then
Yeah.
they sort of went off the radar. I can't even remember the last time I talked about them.
no.
But
Yeah,
I'm not against them.
no, I'm not against them at all. I mean, it's not like, yeah. I mean, what are you taking? What's the point of them, right? We always, when somebody asks us a question about something, we always like, why are you taking it? That's the first and foremost, because a lot of times they are starting way on one end when they really should be starting over here. So a lot of times it's like, what are you taking it for? That's the better question, because there could be a way better solution out there than that. But yeah, we're not against it by any means. My question would be, what's the purpose of them? What are you taking them for? Is how I would, and then from there we would see if that's the best route for them. Okay, so we're out of time again. Dad, you're going to do a Q&A tomorrow morning?
Yes, if Brandy sends me enough questions. Because I
Okay.
got lots of studies. It was National Study Week.
Yeah,
It really
I know.
wasn't, but
No.
I called it that because there was a pile of new studies came out and I found a lot of them very interesting.
Yeah.
And I only got to how many, Brandy? Well, you don't know. You didn't listen this morning.
Well,
I think I
just-
did 2 this morning.
Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah. So again, we'll do this again next week. I mean, we're, there's so many people on here. So we're, I mean, absolutely thrilled and humbled that a lot of people take time out of the day to join us and ask us some questions. We have fun answering the questions. And again, we'll see you next week. We'll do this again. And then for those who weren't on here, we always record it and we'll throw it on our website and we'll email it out to everybody as well. So again, thanks everybody and have a great day.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.